Sometimes silence feels like the heaviest thing you can carry because everything in you wants to respond. Everything in you wants to set the record straight, to prove your innocence, to show that your heart wasn't the problem. But there is a wisdom that lives in silence. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's strategy. There comes a point in life when you realize that not every argument deserves your words. And not every accusation deserves your defense. Silence is not about shrinking. It's about standing in a strength that doesn't need validation. See, the enemy of your peace will try to pull you into battles that were never meant to be fought with words. The trap is thinking that if you just explain enough, if you just speak louder, if you just show more proof, they'll finally understand. But the truth is, some hearts are not ready to hear, and some minds are not willing to see. And when you waste your breath trying to convince what will never be convinced, you drain yourself of the very power you need to move forward. Silence protects you from bleeding in a place that was never going to heal you. It takes courage to shut your mouth when your name is on the line. It takes faith to trust that you don't have to fight every lie with your tongue. There's a God who sees. There's a truth that cannot stay hidden forever. And sometimes your stillness becomes the stage for divine vindication. When you hold your peace, heaven fights for you in ways your words never could. But let's be honest. It hurts. It hurts to be misunderstood. It hurts to be painted as something you're not. It hurts to feel like the silence makes you look guilty. Yet silence is not you bowing out. Silence is you choosing not to play a rigged game. Because when the rules were written to always cast you as the villain, there is no winning by arguing. The only win is stepping out of the arena altogether. That's what silence does. It removes you from the circus and says, I won't dance for your entertainment anymore. Your silence is powerful because it starves manipulation. It frustrates confusion. It disarms control. Silence forces the other side to wrestle with themselves. Because when you stop feeding chaos with your energy, chaos has to sit with its own hunger. And that's when you discover that the real victory isn't proving them wrong. It's protecting your spirit. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the maturity of power. Anyone can clap back. Anyone can scream. Anyone can go back and forth. But it takes a woman who knows who she is, who knows what she carries, who knows her worth, to stand still and let her silence thunder louder than words ever could. That kind of silence makes the enemy nervous because they can't twist it. They can't manipulate it. They can't weaponize it. Silence leaves no fingerprints for them to use against you. And silence doesn't mean you suppress your truth. It doesn't mean you carry the weight in shame. No, it means you choose carefully where your truth is planted. You don't throw pearls in the mud and expect them to shine. You wait until you're in the soil of safe spaces where your voice can be heard without distortion, where your truth can blossom without being trampled. Silence is not about staying muted forever. It's about saving your voice for the spaces that deserve it. If you can learn to master silence, you'll discover that you don't need to chase closure. You don't need to keep reopening wounds just to prove you were bleeding. You don't need to set the record straight with people who already decided to keep it crooked. Silence is you refusing to audition for a role that was written to make you small. Silence is you choosing to walk away without explaining your exit. Silence is you saying, my peace is too expensive to spend on proving myself to someone who never wanted the truth. And the beauty of silence is that while others are busy talking, plotting, accusing, or twisting, you're busy healing. You're busy building. You're busy growing into someone so strong that one day you'll look back and realize the silence was not just protection. It was preparation. Because silence doesn't just keep you safe. It builds your resilience. It trains your spirit to stand tall without applause, to endure without affirmation, to trust without explanation. Silence sharpens your discernment and teaches you that not every fight deserves your fists. Some victories are won by refusing to swing. So if you feel the urge to prove yourself, to shout your innocence, to fight for understanding, pause, breathe. Remember that silence is not you losing the battle. It's you refusing to play in an arena beneath your calling. And sometimes the loudest roar of freedom is the sound of you saying absolutely nothing. Discernment is one of the most powerful gifts you will ever develop because it gives you the ability to see beyond the surface and recognize the spirit of a thing. It's not just about what people say. It's about what they carry. It's not just about how something looks. It's about what it costs your soul. Discernment teaches you that not every hand extended to you is meant to help you rise, and not every smile directed at you is rooted in love. Sometimes the very things that look like opportunities are distractions dressed up in shiny wrapping paper. And if you don't train your spirit to discern, you will spend your life pouring energy into dead places and wondering why you're so exhausted. Discernment whispers to you when something feels off, even if you can't explain it. It's that nudge in your gut that tells you to wait before you commit, to pause before you share, to be careful before you open your heart. And I know how tempting it is to ignore that voice because you want to see the best in people. You want to believe that if you give enough, if you love hard enough, if you sacrifice enough, the intentions of others will somehow change. But discernment reminds you that love doesn't blind you to truth. It opens your eyes to it. When you start walking in discernment, you stop giving everyone access to the deepest parts of you. You stop oversharing with people who only want your story for gossip. You stop accepting every invitation to every fight, every drama, every setup that was never meant to build you. You start realizing that some tables are not for you to sit at because the food being served is poison, and it doesn't matter how pretty the plate looks. Discernment is your shield against manipulation because it helps you see through the disguise. And let me tell you, discernment will sometimes make you look strange to other people. They'll wonder why you walked away from that relationship that seemed perfect on the outside. They'll question why you turned down that opportunity that looked so big. They'll criticize you for not responding the way they expected. But when you know how to listen to the spirit, when you know how to protect your peace, you stop needing their approval to validate your choices. Discernment doesn't always make sense to the crowd, but it will always preserve your soul. Some of you have been drained because you kept giving the benefit of the doubt when discernment was telling you to set a boundary. You kept going back to circles where you left empty every time, hoping it would be different. You kept explaining your worth to people who never intended to honor it. But discernment is about learning that access to you is sacred. Not everyone should be able to touch your spirit. Not everyone should be able to speak into your life. And not everyone should be able to know your heart. The more you grow in discernment, the more you realize that peace is not found in more possessions or more people. It's found in knowing who belongs in your space and who doesn't. It's found in recognizing what drains you and what fills you. It's found in refusing to confuse attention with affection or persistence with love. Just because someone keeps showing up doesn't mean they deserve to stay. Discernment teaches you how to separate consistency from true care. And discernment isn't just about people. It's about you too. It's about recognizing your own patterns, your own weaknesses, your own triggers. Because sometimes the distraction is not on the outside. Sometimes it's in the part of you that wants to fix what's broken, even when fixing it breaks you. Discernment says, you don't have to prove your love by carrying what was never yours to carry. It tells you when to let go of guilt, when to release shame, when to stop trying to heal others at the expense of yourself. The truth is, discernment keeps you aligned with destiny. It keeps you from pouring your oil in places that don't honor it. It keeps you from wasting years in cycles that never produce fruit. It keeps you from mistaking temporary pleasure for permanent purpose. Discernment gives you the wisdom to know when it's time to stay and when it's time to walk away, when it's time to speak and when it's time to stay quiet. when it's time to love from a distance, and when it's safe to let someone close. And I promise you this, when you start living with discernment, you will lose some company, but you will gain your clarity. You will lose some noise, but you will gain your peace. You will lose some attachments, but you will gain your freedom, because discernment is not about keeping everyone out. It's about keeping the wrong ones out so the right ones can find their way in. So when that still small voice tells you to pause, don't rush past it. When your spirit feels uneasy, don't silence it just to keep someone comfortable. When your peace feels disturbed, don't dismiss it like it's nothing. Because discernment is God's way of guiding you to protect what he placed in you. And the moment you start listening to it, you'll discover that not every battle was meant to be fought. Not every offer was meant to be accepted. And not every connection was meant to be kept. Discernment is your shield, and when you carry it, you stop surviving chaos and start protecting destiny. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are doors that remind you who deserves to come in. They are not punishment, they are protection. For too long, many of us have been taught that setting boundaries means we are being selfish, unkind, or unloving. We were conditioned to believe that saying no means we lack compassion, that drawing a line means we don't care. But the truth is, boundaries are the purest expression of self-respect. They are how you declare to the world, what God placed in me is valuable, and I refuse to let it be trampled on. There is nothing holy about allowing yourself to be drained until there's nothing left. There is nothing virtuous about letting people use your kindness like an open buffet, always available, always giving, never replenished. Boundaries are not about shutting love down. They are about teaching love how to flow in a healthy way. They are the difference between love that builds and love that bleeds. And when you finally realize that your worth is not negotiable, you stop letting people bargain with your peace. It's not easy to set boundaries, especially when your heart is naturally giving. You will wrestle with guilt. You will feel the tug of obligation. You will wonder if you're doing the wrong thing by saying no. But listen, your spirit already knows the cost of living without them. Every sleepless night you spent replaying conversations, every time you felt invisible after giving so much, every tear you cried because you were stretched beyond your limit, those were the receipts of a life without boundaries. And at some point, you have to decide that your soul cannot afford to live like that anymore. When you set a boundary, you are not shutting the door on love. You are inviting real love in. Because only the ones who truly care about you will respect the line you draw. Those who manipulate, those who take without giving, those who twist your kindness for their advantage, they will resist. They will call you difficult, selfish, or cold, but their reaction is not proof that your boundary is wrong. It is proof that your boundary was necessary. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always be the loudest when you finally put one up. But here's the shift. When you start protecting yourself, you stop attracting takers and you start creating space for givers. You stop inviting people who drain you and you make room for people who pour back into you. Because boundaries don't just keep out what's harmful, they prepare you for what's healthy. They create the conditions where love, respect, and reciprocity can actually thrive. Sometimes boundaries look like saying no without explaining yourself. Sometimes they look like blocking a number and not feeling bad about it. Sometimes they look like deciding that family doesn't get a pass to mistreat you just because they share your blood. Sometimes they look like creating space to rest without apologizing for being unavailable. And sometimes they look like keeping certain pieces of your story sacred because not everyone has earned the right to hold it. Boundaries are holy ground because they remind you that you are not just anybody. You are chosen. You are valuable. You are worthy of care. And anything that threatens to diminish, that is not allowed to stay unchecked. When you set a boundary, you are declaring that your life is not up for abuse. Your spirit is not available for exploitation. And your heart is not free from manipulation. You are declaring that you understand who you are and that you will not shrink just to make others comfortable. I know it feels hard. I know it feels lonely sometimes. I know you wonder if drawing lines will leave you by yourself. But let me tell you, being alone with peace is better than being surrounded in chaos. Being alone with God's presence is better than being entangled in toxic company. Being alone in healing is better than being drained in hurt. Boundaries might cost you company, but they will save your soul. And over time, you'll see how boundaries don't just protect you, they teach others how to treat you. They set the standard for every relationship you walk into. They establish the foundation for how love, friendship, and even opportunities must approach you. Because when you honor yourself enough to draw lines, the world learns to honor you too. So don't feel guilty for protecting your peace. Don't apologize for saying no. Don't shrink back from the power of declaring what is acceptable in your life. Your boundaries are sacred. They are the fences around your garden, the locks on your treasure, the guardrails on your destiny. And anyone who truly values you will never ask you to remove them. Boundaries are holy ground. And when you stand on them, you stand in your worth. There comes a moment when you realize that holding on is not strength, it's a weight. You think you're proving your loyalty, proving your endurance, proving your love by staying connected to something that's been draining you. But not every connection is covenant, and not every tie deserves your energy. Some ties are assignments meant only for a season, and when the season ends, clinging becomes captivity. Detachment isn't about being cold or unloving. It's about protecting your destiny from people and places that were never meant to carry it. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean your heart wasn't real. It doesn't mean your prayers, your effort, your sacrifices didn't matter. What it means is that you've reached a point of wisdom where you can acknowledge that love alone can't keep what God has already released. It means you've recognized that peace is not found in holding tighter, but in loosening your grip, because sometimes the very thing you're fighting to keep is the very thing keeping you from freedom. We've been told that walking away is weakness, but the truth is, walking away often requires more courage than staying. Staying in dysfunction doesn't make you strong, it just makes you stuck. Detachment says, I refuse to sacrifice my future on the altar of familiar pain. It's making the choice to cut ties with what consistently pulls you backwards, even when it hurts. Because yes, it does hurt. It hurts to unlearn patterns. It hurts to break ties. It hurts to walk away from what once felt like home. But the pain of release is temporary, while the cost of staying attached to dead weight is permanent. The beauty of detachment is that it creates space. When you release what no longer serves your growth, you create room for new opportunities, healthier relationships, deeper healing. You stop carrying baggage that was never yours to carry in the first place. You stop confusing loyalty with self-destruction. You stop trying to water gardens that never planned to bloom with you. Detachment frees your hands so you can finally grab hold of the life waiting for you on the other side of the letting go. And let me say this, it's not easy, especially when your heart is wired for compassion. You'll wonder if you're abandoning someone. You'll question if you should have tried one more time. You'll replay conversations in your head, thinking of what you could have done differently. But sometimes the lesson isn't in fixing, it's in releasing. Sometimes God teaches you that the blessing isn't in what you hold on to, it's in what you had the courage to walk away from. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop losing yourself in love. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your own soul not to sacrifice it for someone else's chaos. It doesn't mean you're bitter. It means you're better because you've learned how to protect what's sacred in you. Detachment is not rejection, it's redirection. And once you understand that, you stop seeing it as loss and start seeing it as alignment. Sometimes the ties you have to cut are not just with people. They're with versions of yourself that no longer exist. The you who tolerated mistreatment, The you who begged to be seen. The you who kept shrinking just to keep peace. Detachment is also about releasing that version of yourself so you can rise into who you were always meant to be. Because as long as you cling to old identities, you can't step fully into new destinies. You will know it's time to detach when you find yourself constantly drained, constantly questioning your worth, constantly compromising your peace. That's your soul's alarm system telling you something has to shift. And the more you ignore it, the heavier life feels. But the moment you decide to detach, the weight begins to lift, the fog begins to clear, and the strength you thought you lost begins to return. Yes, some people will not understand. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold. They'll say you're selfish. But their misunderstanding is not your burden to carry, because people who benefited from your attachment will always resist your freedom. That's why detachment is not for them. It's for you. It's the key to your clarity, your healing, your elevation. So don't feel guilty for letting go. Don't apologize for choosing peace. Don't shrink under the pressure to stay where your spirit no longer belongs. Detachment is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where you finally get to breathe without the weight of what was never meant for you. Detach to protect your destiny, because nothing is worth the cost of your peace. There comes a point when you realize that your voice is not something you need permission to use. For too long, you may have been told to quiet down, to make yourself smaller, to explain your worth in ways that made others feel comfortable. You may have begged to be understood, bent over backwards to be accepted, and given too many explanations just to prove you belong. But the truth is, your value was established long before anyone's opinion tried to measure it. You don't need to convince people of what's already in you. You only need to reclaim the confidence to stand in it. Reclaiming your voice doesn't mean raising your volume. It means reclaiming your authority. It means recognizing that your story, your truth, your perspective has power, even if no one applauds it. Too often we think power comes from being validated, from being celebrated, from being chosen. But real power comes from knowing that even if no one claps, even if no one affirms, even if no one sees, you are still worthy, still enough, still called. And once you embrace that, you stop wasting your energy trying to explain yourself to people who only listen to twist your words. There is a deep freedom in no longer over-explaining. You don't have to defend why you left. You don't have to justify why you said no. You don't have to break yourself down into bite-sized pieces so others can digest you. When you know who you are, you stop feeling the need to hand out explanations like receipts. Because sometimes your silence is explanation enough. Sometimes your peace is proof enough. Sometimes your growth is the only evidence you need. And here's the truth. The people who truly value you don't require you to constantly explain yourself. They don't need you to prove your worth because they already see it. They don't question your every move because they trust your heart. But the ones who demand endless explanations are often the ones who never planned to honor you in the first place. Reclaiming your voice is about refusing to keep auditioning for roles in lives where you were never meant to fit. When you reclaim your voice, you give yourself permission to tell your story without shame. You stop letting others narrate your life with their lies, and you start speaking the truth of your own healing. You begin to say, yes, I went through pain, but pain didn't define me. Yes, I've made mistakes, but mistakes didn't disqualify me. Yes, I've been broken, but brokenness didn't destroy me. You begin to speak from a place of authority because you've survived things that were meant to silence you. And the very voice you once muted becomes the testimony that helps someone else find theirs. But reclaiming your voice also means learning when not to use it. It means knowing that you don't have to argue every point, respond to every attack, or justify every decision. Sometimes strength is in the quiet, in the restraint, in the refusal to waste words on ears that were never willing to hear. Your voice is too precious to be scattered in places that only want to distort it. So you become intentional. You choose carefully when to speak, how to speak, and to whom you speak. That is how you protect your power. The shift comes when you realize your voice was never designed for convincing. It was designed for creating. You were not given breath to constantly prove yourself. You were given breath to declare life, to birth vision, to shift atmospheres. And the moment you stop using your voice to beg and start using it to build, everything changes. You stop feeling like you're on trial and you start walking like you're in purpose. I know it's not easy, especially when your heart longs to be understood. You want people to know you never meant harm, that your intentions were pure, that your love was real. But the painful truth is, some people will never see you clearly because they don't want to. And once you accept that, you stop trying to hand out clarity to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your voice is not meant for convincing them. Your voice is meant for declaring freedom for you. So stop shrinking, stop apologizing, stop over-explaining, stand firm in who you are. Speak when your spirit calls you to speak, and be silent when peace requires it. Trust that your worth does not live in someone else's understanding of you. It lives in the unshakable truth of who you were created to be. Reclaim your voice without explaining your value, because your existence alone is already the evidence. Healing is one of the bravest choices you will ever make, because it means you refuse to let what hurt you become what defines you. It means you've decided that the story won't end with the wound. Too many people think winning is about proving somebody wrong, showing up stronger, looking untouchable. But real victory is not in pretending you were never broken. It's in doing the work to become whole again. Healing is the quiet fight that no one sees, the daily decision to choose peace over bitterness, growth over stagnation, and freedom over cycles. The world often glamorizes revenge, as if getting back at someone is the only way to reclaim your power. But there's no freedom in revenge. It ties you to the same pain you're trying to escape. Healing, on the other hand, severs the chain. Healing says, what was meant to break me may have bent me, but it did not bury me. Healing is the proof that you are more than what you went through, more than the betrayal, more than the disappointment, more than the abandonment. But let's be real. Healing isn't easy. It's not just taking a deep breath and declaring yourself fine. Healing is messy. Healing asks you to confront memories you tried to bury. Healing requires you to forgive when you'd rather stay angry. Healing demands that you look at yourself, not to blame, but to grow. And sometimes healing feels unfair, because the ones who hurt you go on living their lives while you're left with the pieces. Yet in that process, you discover that healing was never about them. It was always about you. It's about setting yourself free from the prison of pain so you can finally breathe again. Healing also takes patience. You don't go from wounded to whole overnight. It's a journey, not a sprint. There will be days when you feel like you've moved forward and then something triggers you and suddenly you feel pulled back. Don't mistake that for failure. That's just part of the process. Every time you choose to keep going, even when it hurts, you are building strength you didn't have before. Every tear you cry becomes water for the seed of the person you're becoming. The beauty of healing is that it transforms the way you see yourself. Pain often whispers lies. You're not enough. You'll never recover. You'll always be broken. But as healing takes root, you start to see yourself differently. You recognize that surviving didn't make you weak. It made you resilient. You begin to see the strength in your scars, not as reminders of loss, but as proof of survival. Healing restores the vision of your worth that pain tried to steal. And healing doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone connected to you. When you heal, you stop passing down cycles of dysfunction. When you heal, you become the safe space for others to heal. When you heal, you show the people around you that it is possible to come out of fire and not smell like smoke. Your healing becomes a ripple that shifts the atmosphere for generations. One of the most powerful truths about healing is that it reclaims your future. Pain tries to keep you stuck in yesterday, rehearsing old conversations, replaying old wounds. But healing turns your face forward. Healing reminds you that you still have chapters to write, dreams to live, love to experience. Healing doesn't erase the past, but it redeems it by refusing to let it control your tomorrow. Sometimes we think healing means forgetting, but it doesn't. Healing doesn't erase the memory, it takes away the sting. Healing doesn't deny what happened, it transforms how you carry it. You may always remember what you went through, but you won't live bound to it anymore. Healing gives you the power to tell your story without trembling, to look at your past without reliving it, to honor your journey without being imprisoned by it. And I know, deep down, part of you wonders if healing is even possible. After so much hurt, after so much betrayal, after so much loss, you wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. Let me tell you, you will. Because healing is not about erasing what happened, it's about rebuilding what remains. And what remains in you is strong. What remains in you is sacred. What remains in you is still worthy of joy. So don't chase revenge. Don't chase validation. Don't chase recognition. Chase wholeness. Choose healing even when it feels harder than holding on to the pain. Because the moment you start to heal, you realize that the greatest victory was never in proving anything to anyone else.